All right, welcome back, everybody, to Embrace the Squiggle. We are excited today. Our guest is a former corporate banker turned senior finance consultant and now a podcast strategist who helps companies, entrepreneurs, and creators turn podcasts into powerful business and revenue generating tools. And like many great career pivots, his journey didn't follow that straight line. What started as a love for podcasts during workouts and folding laundry eventually evolved into launching the Corporate Treasury podcast and discovering a passion that completely reshaped his career path. Now he combines his background in finance, business, and marketing to help people build podcasts with intention, strategy, and impact. So get ready to explore career reinvention, building authority through content, the business side of podcasting, and what happens when you finally lean into something that energizes you. I'm so excited today to welcome Guillaume Jouvencel. Hopefully, I didn't butcher your name there, Guillaume, today.
So not
Guillaume.
only not only did you nail it, Colin, so thank you. And my God, what an introduction. I'm gonna try to live up to the expectations, but thank you so much. Very flattering, a very nice intro.
Excellent. So we always start with our question of what did little Guillaume think he was going to be when he grew up?
I don't know if I should say this. We're starting right off the bat. So I wanted to be first a plastic surgeon, and then a trader.
That
And
those are quite impressive for like a little kid to think about. So
I was just gonna say that.
yeah,
I'm impressed with your dreams at such a little person.
so, I mean, the common theme between those two jobs is very clear, right? It's money. I wanted to make money when I was very young, and then I looked at how long it would take to become an actual plastic surgeon, and I was like, cool, I would like to have a life before I'm 35 years old. So I gave up on this idea. And trader, well, kind of got close to the word, but then it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. But yeah, young Guillaume's dream was plastic surgeon and trader indeed.
so you didn't study those things. That's not where you landed.
I did not.
You did not. And so when you were going off to university, what were you thinking then?
Yeah, in France, it's interesting. It's a bit different than
It
the
is. Yeah.
American system, obviously. So after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I ended up in the I don't know if I should call it like this, but kind of the garbage university that you didn't really need to apply to, and that everybody that was, denied in all the other universities and fancy study fields were going to. And the first day was like in a theater of like 250 sitting spots. We were like 600. The dean of the university attended the first lesson, class, whatever, and he was like, "Cool. So just so you know, guys, there is a 97% failure rate on the first year on this university. So for most of you today, I'll probably never see you again. For the 3%, see you next year." That was the introduction of my first year of university.
Well, welcome to college. So,
Exactly. Spoiler alert, I didn't make the cut of the 3%. I realized that kind of this format wasn't for me. In France, I don't know if you have that in the US, but there is a system that is called apprenticeship, where you
mhm.
can basically find a school that will work together with a company to have you work and study at the same time. Initially, that was for more like manual work, like hairdressing and like
Yeah.
plumbing and so on, which is fantastic. But in France, they developed it into business. And there was a degree that was basically becoming a salesperson whilst studying that specifically, which I got denied, obviously. But if you manage to find a company, it's so rare for an 18 years old to find a company to pay for the school and to actually do the apprenticeship, that they were like, if you find a company, we have no choice but to accept you. So my first hustle was that 19 years old me finding an apprenticeship and signing up. So I studied business very fast, just because this was the only field that I could kind of walk around my poor high school file or school record, however we call it.
Yeah. So I love that. In our household, so I have two kids and who just graduated college here in the States. But
Congrats.
when they were in high school and going off to college, we kept telling them C's get degrees and A students are boring. Because I 100% believe that the students who are doing all the other stuff, like
Hmm.
either internships and apprenticeships or clubs or working another job. They're doing the things that are interesting, and they're the ones who learn how to hustle, who learn how to show up for work every day, right?
Yeah.
The kids who are A students, all they know how to do is be an A student because they don't have time for anything else.
Amen to
Yeah,
that.
I wish you were my mom when I was in college because I was a C student because I wanted to do all of the clubs and work multiple jobs. And I will say that your theory is very true. It does teach you the right type of hustle. So
So what
C's
did
get
you guys
degrees.
study? Out of curiosity, what did you study, Ashley and Colleen?
I studied political science, public policy, and
Ooh,
business management, and I thought I wanted to be in the US House and be in politics and quickly realized that was not the life for me.
enough.
I started the same path as Ashley. I started as political science, international
Interesting.
relations with a plan to go to law school. And by one semester in college, I switched to psychology. And by 3 semesters in, I switched to sports psychology because I thought it was fun and literally had no idea what I was going to do with that, except that the classes were fun and I liked the professors. So I,
Which is
yeah,
important.
yeah. Yeah, and just squiggled my way around. And I always say looking back, you can see that straight line, right? Like I can see the string that connects all the jobs, but at the time I felt like every time I switched jobs that I was just like bouncing all over the place. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So,
You can only connect the dots afterwards, which is interesting. I think it's a Steve Jobs speech at Stanford graduation
yeah.
or something like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we expect young people of 18 years old to know exactly what they want to do in life, which is maybe a bit early. But anyways, that's probably for another podcast.
Oh no, I could talk about that for days because I'm constantly saying, right? I look at my kids. One went to school in Canada, which has a much more European type system, right? So she
Yeah.
had to pick her major, and there was no switching. And then my kid went to a liberal arts school where she studied a whole bunch of things and ended up with a degree in economics and global health. Not that she wanted to do anything with global health; she just thought the classes were fun, right? She also took ballet
There we
for
go.
2 years, and right, like just all of this other stuff that
Why not?
right? Because that's that kind of, you know, well-rounded education you get at those liberal arts schools. So, all right, well back to you. So you finish this apprenticeship, you obviously can sell things and you end up in banking and in big corporate I was going to say corporate America, but you were corporate France. Were you in France that whole time before you got here?
Yeah, where
Yeah.
were you?
Where were you?
Yes.
Where were
Where
you?
were
Where
you?
were you in the world?
It's a bit my career is a bit of a mess, but a nice mess, I'd say. So the first degree I got was like 2 years, and I didn't want to stop there, obviously. So I did a 1 year of study abroad, which is called Erasmus. I don't know if that's a
Mhm.
term that your audience is familiar with, but it's basically like studying abroad, like same way you would go and study in Mexico or in Europe. I did that in the east of Europe, in Lithuania. That was for 1 year, and then I did another 2 years for a master's degree in retail banking, because I had a teacher during my first 2 years degree, for whom I nailed it in class, and he was like, "Hey, you should come and apply to Crédit Agricole, which is one of the biggest retail bank in France." So I did that, and then I wanted to go back abroad. And the system that has been put in place by the French government, which is actually cool, it's basically of an international internship within a French company, but abroad. And you have like lots of tax incentives for yourself and the company. And so what I did was corporate banking for Société Générale, which is one of the big corporate bank in France, in Belgium. I loved the field and the country so much that I was like, I want to stay here. And I found a job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the big fours. And this is how I got into treasury, started a podcast, and the rest is described in the introduction of this episode.
I love that. I've like I said, my one kid went to school in Canada in Montreal, so
Mhm.
you know, Canada's I want to say a better version of America, particularly at the moment. But Montreal felt very European, so that was good for her. My other did a semester abroad in Ireland, but that whole international piece, I wish more kids got that experience, right? It
Oh yeah.
it gives them such a different view on the world. They learn so many you learn just so many skills just living in another country. And I've been lucky enough to get to Belgium, and it was one of those countries I didn't
Ooh.
it was not on a bucket list or anything. I had to go to Brussels for work, and we got there and I was like, wow, like it was the thing that impressed me so much was the ability for everybody there to just switch languages, right? It's that hub of Europe where
Yeah.
you go into a restaurant and every waiter and waitress is speaking 5 different languages at 5 different tables. It was
Yeah.
mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's the capital of Europe, but you're 100% right. I feel so. This is something where US and France are probably similar. Like we are very self-centered. Like in France, it's rare to speak English. We are very proud of the French culture, of the French speaking. I mean, if it wasn't for a couple of lost battles in the 18th or 19th century, the world would speak French. But unfortunately, we lost against the British. Again, another podcast.
Just still
But yeah,
salty
so
about that. Still feels like there's a little resentment
still,
still there,
still a
but,
bit,
you know.
still a bit. But yeah, you're right. Like just going abroad is it's amazing. It just gives you a whole different perspective. And I mean, for people like me, it makes you want to do more and end up in the US as you know.
I think it's such an opportunity for us when we're abroad as well to learn a lot about ourselves, not just about another culture, but how uh, what we really are skilled in. Because I think that when we stay in our little hub, that in our comfort zone, we're not stretching ourselves. We don't really know what we're capable of, and we really do discover that when we're outside of that comfort zone, and especially when we're outside of our country. So, what as a part of that, what was the catalyst that then brought you to the United States?
Yeah. So, and I guess that's gonna lead into the topic of today. So, amazing transition, actually. The so whilst I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, so it was right in the middle of COVID. It was 2021 when I started. And in 2022, fourth or fifth wave of COVID, I was very good friend with a gentleman, a Scottish gentleman actually called Hussam, and we were a bit bored with our lives. Most young people our age were doing drugs and going to parties, and we were like, let's start a podcast about finance, because we're the cool kids. And so we did, and we were just having fun. I mean, the first episodes are absolutely terrible, but 6 months down the line, the podcast started getting traction. And one of our guests was another podcaster as well, and was like, "Guys, this is amazing. I'm gonna have my agency like work on this. It's gonna cost £2,000, $2,500 for 4 episodes." And we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Mike! We do this for fun. We won't pay £1,000 pounds, let alone £2,000 if that's what you have in mind." And I was like, "No, no, no worries. I'm covering it all." And we're like, "Oh." So people pay that type of money for podcast services. It was before all the AI tools, as you can imagine. And we're like, cool, let us do it for you. And so that's the first time we actually got business just doing content and doing something outside of our work. And same thing, he was working as an engineer at Procter& Gamble. He was about to be sent as an expatriate in Japan, like promising career. And at the same time, the podcast that we launched, Corporate Treasury 101, started bringing deal opportunities for PwC, for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And here we're talking about like 6-figure deals. And we're like, wait a second, like podcast is not just about two bros sitting on the couch and recording on a microphone that they think is a microphone like this, but actually it was the laptop microphone because we had no clue what we were doing. And so we launched our business. We started doing this full-time podcast agency, and our business exploded in the US for multiple reasons. The main one being podcast is very popular in the US. It's a media channel that is much more widely spread as a format than in other countries, although France, UK, Australia are ramping up. And so business grew in the US a lot. After 2 years, I was like, we had never set foot in the US, both of us. So in September last year, September 2025, I was like, let's go there. Let's meet some clients. Let's do a bit of biz dev. Let's see how it is. Let's see, the American culture. Let's be in the same time zone for once. And so I was planning of doing 1 month and a half, like 6 cities. I ended up staying 3 months with an additional month and a half in Houston specifically. And I was like, with all its flaws, the United States of America is a great country to do business. And I was like, let's move in here. Let's see what happens. So that is a very long-winded answer, Ashley, to your question on what led me to the US. Initially business, and then I was like, actually, the country is cool for certain things.
I I didn't think about the fact, or maybe it wasn't not thinking about it, just not knowing that podcasts started off being more popular here in the U.S. And
Oh
what
yeah.
I'm about to say might get me in trouble, but it's probably because we're very nosy here. We, as Americans, we want to be in everybody's business all the time, whether we need to be in that business or not. And podcasts, it's like our way of, you have people who are oversharers and love to talk about themselves and their topics. And then you have people who are just real nosy and want to know what's going on with topics that have nothing to do with them. So, welcome to the podcast world.
So this is gold, Ashley. One thing that I think might explain as well is the fact that the car culture in the commute culture in the US is
Mm.
much bigger. One of the niches that we were completely mind blown was actually a big thing. So some of our biggest clients are in the HVAC space. And we're like, but why is that? Like, why is it that so many people listen to HVAC podcasts, HVAC professionals, and so on, service businesses in general? And one of our clients actually explained us. It was like, yeah, an average like HVAC technician like does 3 to 4 hours of car driving each and every day. What do they do whilst they drive? Well, they listen to stuff. They either listen to music, radio, or a podcast that is useful to them. And I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I feel the fact of Americans also having long commutes and like the usage of the car is much more spread, um, leads to people wanting to consume useful stuff, which is leaning towards podcast. I might be completely wrong on this, but that's my interpretation of it.
Your interpretation is far more eloquent than mine. Mine is just,
But people are nosy as well.
It's snarky. I'm snarky.
I like it.
Yeah, that makes total sense as you're saying that. I'd never thought of it from that perspective because I think of myself because I work for myself, right? My commute is 8 paces from one side of the house to the other most days. Um, and I do listen to all my podcasts when I drive places. So when I am traveling for work, that's when I listen to them, or when I go for walks in the morning. And I think it's also a very American thing to walk for exercise as opposed to walk for life, for lack of a better word, right? Like when I lived in a city, I lived in Boston for many years. I never thought to just go for a walk for exercise. I walked to get my groceries. I walked to do all the things where in suburbia, the closest thing to me is 4.5 miles away. I'm not going to go walk to get a cup of coffee
Yeah.
for an hour and a half each way. So,
Which makes sense. It's so funny. I had this conversation yesterday with friends at work here, and yeah, in Europe you have this culture of walking for sure, but still you don't listen to that much podcast whilst you walk for some reasons. I think it's because you do it just to do the basic stuff. Indeed, I don't know, but yeah, it's funny to see that walking is considered a sports activity here in the US, which makes sense. It's actually very good and very healthy to walk on a daily basis. But yeah,
okay, so you jump into this podcast world and you end up building your entire business around podcasts.
yep,
So, uh, um, I don't even know where to start with all my questions about this, right? What do you do for people, right? So for your business, how do you help other businesses build
yeah,
themselves with your podcasts
yeah. So
or with their podcasts?
yeah, as you probably start to get a feel for, Colin, I'm like squiggling my way through career and through business. Hopefully, that was a proper usage of the word. I'm still figuring my way out around this one. But so, what we do in a nutshell is we help high ticket professional service firms build a brand and acquire customers using podcasts. Now, that's all fancy. That's the punchline. But what does it mean? We had lots of iteration in the way we were doing podcasts and helping people with podcasts. And where we are right now is we focus on businesses where you don't have a business if you don't have relationships. So think about accounting firms, executive search, consulting, high ticket B2B leadership coaching, like all those M&A brokers, right? Those professions where it's not a widget. We are not selling cars. We are selling high skilled people. And the only way you can trust someone with six-figure projects is because you have a relationship with them and you trust that they can deliver. And so the way we position ourselves is we live, so we record this in May 2026. I think we could fairly say that we are in a trust recession world. And building trust, building relationships is key for this type of businesses now. So this is what we help with. So we come in, we say, look, you need to have conversations with decision makers on a regular basis if you want to be able to grow your business, let alone just maybe, keeping it steady. Let us help you do that. So start a podcast, position it in a way that is going to make sense for your industry and your ideal customer specifically, right? We don't really care about vanity metrics here. We don't care about millions of downloads. What we care about is when an ICP, say you work with CFOs, right? When a CFOs of a mid-sized company sees your podcast, receives an invite to be on, or sees someone like them talking about it on LinkedIn, they immediately go, hey, this is for me. And now that's your foot in the door and you're like, they're going to find out more about you, explore more, or say yes to come on the podcast so you can build a relationship with them. That's what we help them do. What that means in like tactical and actual approach we can discuss, but it's like, in essence, we help them build relationship on a regular basis.
I was going to share that when I was working with a marketing company with my website, my brand, and launching my business, I was scared to post videos. I had a TikTok, and I would post a couple of things on there, and that was at the time vulnerable enough for me. I would close my eyes when I would hit post because I never wanted to see it again. And the marketing company said, no, you need to be posting those on LinkedIn because trust is built through hearing your voice and seeing your face. Because when people can hear your voice and see your face, they believe you're a real person and they start to feel like they are getting to know you even if they haven't met you. And it draws them in to want to know more about you and your business. So what you're doing really feeds exactly that same message I was being told from the marketing company about that, just that real messaging around trust. And you're helping these leaders and these businesses build trust with people before they even meet them.
So actually, you're so spot on, and I will piggyback on this if I may for a second. But that's true for people finding out about you. But I would say this is also true for someone you've got in touch with via another channel, right? An introduction or someone. They see an ad whatsoever. I'm yet to see someone buying a 5, 6, 7-figure project, deal, service, whatever, without first doing more research around the person. And everything that you said actually is true for like the first touch point, but also the second, the third, the fourth. It is so important today to show that you're alive and to show that you have a repository of like content and proof, helping people like the one you say you're helping, and solving their problem, showing the solution and so on and so forth. So yes, 100% trust building for people getting the first touch points, but also the second, third, fourth, fifth. Hell, the 20th nowadays. This is what's required to get people to trust you, right? It's unfortunate, but it's how it is.
And that erosion of trust that's happening right now in the world is huge. A lot of the leaders that I work with, they are dealing with this internally within their organization, with their teams of people not trusting the leaders, people not trusting each other. And that feeling of I don't know you in this world, particularly I see this at companies where everyone works remotely, right? If you're never in the same space and you're not seeing their face, you're not hearing their voice, people don't even trust their coworkers because they don't know them. So I could see how a podcast, because I think of podcasts I listen to, I feel like I know the hosts of those podcasts when I don't even, right?
100%. And it's so interesting that you put the finger on this, Colin, because as we go up and up in terms of avatar and people we serve, we started serving like mid-sized companies like making $200-300 million a year. And some of them are like, hey, we get it, we want this, but not to acquire customers. We want it to attract talents and to nurture the ones we have in-house. Because there is such a gap between the first, second layers, even of management, and the top leadership, that we're like, let's do a podcast series where we make people come in the studio in-house at the headquarters, where we have conversations about what every department does, the value and the vision of the company, so that the employees and the team members know what we are about, and build that rapport with us, stick longer, attract more people. So 100%, this is true, like in outside the company and inside the company for bigger organizations, obviously, but very, very true.
But I think even small organizations, I watch my daughter just got her first job. They're, I think, like a 1,400 person company, so not a huge company, but not teeny tiny.
Right.
And one of the things she did before her interview was listen to their podcast because it was posted on their website, and they most of their podcasts were just interviewing somebody who works there, right? We're going to talk to Ashley today about what she does as a chief people officer, and Guillaume is what he does in a marketing team, right? And they just go through. So she was actually able to find podcasts that made sense for the job she was applying for.
100%. And I feel the more unedited and authentic the content is, the more people are going to be able to not only relate, but connect with the host and the person interviewed as well, which is why we like to do everything live and not edit much, because we want people to hear us fumble. We want people to hear my weird French accent and sometimes, forgetting my English and not finding the word. But it's because this additional thing that may seem like a flaw and something you want to get rid of to polish the content and everything. Podcast allows you kinda to keep it raw, to keep it true, authentic, and this is what makes people like your daughter, Colleen, eventually say, yes, I'll see, and I'll work with this company.
I think that's brilliant, and I don't know if I've had my head in the sand for a bit of time, but this is the first time I'm hearing about it in reference to hiring. And I feel like that would have solved quite a few problems back in my corporate life if I was using that approach. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, again, I feel it depends on the field, right, and on the company. I know, so I'm coming from the Big Four world, so I'm a bit familiar with this one. I recently interviewed a partner at Deloitte on my show, and there are those are the two biggest challenges ever right now for all the Big Four and the major consulting firms. It's how to properly use AI, but I think that's across all industries, all companies. But in an industry where you have a pyramidal structure where you get a lot of juniors, and people, it's up or out typically. So like junior, senior, manager, director, partner. But so the whole structure works on the basis of hiring the best talents at the bottom and make them climb. But with AI, do you need those talents still? But if you don't need those talents, where does the middle management and the partner come from 10 years from now? That's one big challenge. And two, how do we compete for the best talents? Because it's even more important to have the best ones. And as we know, the new generation is working a bit differently and has different ambitions and like values at work as well. So like joining a firm for almost, at the beginning at least, close to minimum wage in terms of real dollar per hour is not the most attractive. Working 80, 90 hours a week, hour per week is not the most attractive. So like, how do you build that trust, that authority, and that attraction to be like, hey, you're talented, you're ambitious, you want to work in a competitive field, come and join us. 100% relevant for those big companies, and I suspect the smaller as well, of course.
Have you ever come across a situation where you've helped somebody launch their podcast, and a few episodes in, you thought they should not be doing this, or this is not for them?
I had a guest on my show ask me this question recently. She was a bit more less polite about it than you, Ashley. She was like, "Hey, how many people did you help launch a podcast?" And I was like, "Man, those boys are boring." She was a very friendly lady, Megan. I'm sure she will recognize herself if she watches this. So the thing I often say for this, Ashley, is let's assume that the content is so boring that no one listens to it, right? You get no downloads, you get no views, you get no traction from the clips that you're producing for LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X/Twitter, YouTube Short, like 0 views out of each and every episode for the first 50 episodes, right? Which is unrealistic, but let's assume you get 0. But that still allowed you to build 50 relationships with 50 potential referral partners, decision makers, if not clients. Is that still worthwhile to you? Now, certain industries, certain companies, definitely not, right? If your average ticket is $100, $200, 50 conversations, 5 clients, that's $1,000, probably not worth the time. But when we are talking about people having $50, $100, $150,000 of lifetime value per customer, it becomes a whole different question. So I know that's a bit of a walk around to your question, Ashley. Yes, there are some boring podcasts out there. My first podcast is pretty damn boring. Like, I talk about corporate treasury for like companies making more than $500 million a year, with a French accent, and not knowing a lot. We just know a little bit about the topic that we talk on the day, but that's it. And still 300, 400, 500 people tune in for each and every episode, and people join the PwC afterwards. So I guess what's boring to most will not be boring for a few. And if you target those few properly, this is what matters.
I love that attitude around it. I know when I went to Podfest this past year, somebody on stage was talking, and an audience question was, I only get 25 downloads each episode. Is it worth me continuing to do this? And the woman said, if every week you could stand in front of a room of 25 people every week, would you show up? Right? Every week, would you show up if you could have 25 people to listen to you? And they were like, well, yeah, 25 people. Of course I would show up in that room. She's like, it's exactly what the podcast is. Just if you can kind of think of it that way and think of how it is helping you become a trusted partner, being a trusted advisor, is people recognizing your name, your voice, who you are. It's amazing how that goes. I know we were about a year into the podcast when I had those moments of like, should we bother? Should I bother keep doing this? It was with my old co-host before Ashley came on board. And I was in the airport in Boston, which is almost 2 hours away from me. We're going through security, and some lady yells, Colleen Del Vecchio from Embrace the Squiggle. And we whip around, and my husband is like, did you plant that person? I'm like, I have no idea who this woman is. Right? This woman comes up, gives me a big hug. I happen to have stickers on me from the podcast. So I'm like, here, do you want a sticker? She's like, this is the best moment of my life. I can't believe I met you. And I'm like dying laughing, and we were there at my best friend's. And when she walked away, my husband, I was like, did you plant her? Did one of us plant this person to do this? And it's like, no, she had found our podcast, had listened to it, and she was so excited because instantly I was that person who felt like, I knew all the things to her, right? I was instantly a trusted person to this complete stranger.
I mean, I don't know how much you want us to go on a tangent here, Colin, but everything in what you just said is like so on point, especially for niche B2B companies. And that's going to be true for other companies as well, but I work with those, so that's what I can talk to specifically. But to your point around, if you were to talk in front of a room of 25 people each and every week, would that be valuable to you? And I would even top that up with, if those people are the decision maker of 5, 6, 7-figure decisions, is it worth building trust with them? Even if it takes 6 months, right? Even if they binge listen to you for 6 months before even reaching out, is that worthwhile? Probably. The thing that you just described happened to me to the first conference we ever went. Same thing with Corporate Treasury 101. And it was like a senior director at Siemens Energy, like a gentleman. So it's a big German company whatsoever. And I was like, I didn't know what to do, being recognized like with my, whatever podcast that is just up and coming. But this ability to build trust, be in the ears of someone for like weeks after weeks after weeks after weeks, one shouldn't underestimate the effect that this can have on your brand and therefore your company, your trust, and so on. It is gold. And we say podcast, but that's true for LinkedIn, YouTube, right? Any piece of content that is, and that's what I'm going to finish on here, that is genuinely valuable for a very niche audience. If it's valuable, if you know you're doing good work as to the content and how like it helps people solving their problem, helping them achieve their desired outcome, whatever it is, this is extremely valuable for a few people, and you should be doing it.
Well, great. I think that is our perfect ending point for today. This has been wonderful. I'm going to pass you off to Ashley, who does our quick rapid fire questions to wrap us up for the day.
So we have to start with, what is your number one binge-worthy podcast?
Oh, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I'm gonna. Oh, that's a tough one. So I'm gonna name two. I'm gonna name the first one that actually inspired us to start our own podcast, which is Modern Wisdom from Chris Williamson. And the second one is The Game from Alex Hormozy, who I consider my mentor and who is like all things business. Learned a lot from his podcast. So those are, if I can cheat a bit, Ashley, I'm gonna say those two. Those are the two that I simply binge listen.
What would you say, or who would you say is your dream podcast guest, if you have one?
Alive or dead?
Oh, I think you can go either way. I'd love to hear the answer. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna give two. One alive and one dead. So one, and I want to caveat this with all politics set aside, purely looking at the businessman. I'm gonna say Elon Musk. Like looking at someone building from scratch and betting everything and being controversial and so on, but like building huge businesses or taking businesses and taking them to the next level. I'd love to pick this guy's brain, as messed up as it might be. That's one. And I often say Muhammad Ali. In like someone I would like to have dinner with, or like when everything is against you and you still come up top with discipline, sheer grit, and competitiveness. Yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with Muhammad Ali.
Those are really good answers, so I'm happy that I said both.
Thank you, Ashley.
When you're not podcasting or talking about podcasting, what's one of your favorite hobbies?
Sleeping, because that's probably the only thing I do when I'm not actually thinking about podcasting. No, I like to go to the gym a lot. And that was actually one of my big projects over the last few weeks, finding a good gym in Houston in the US. But yeah, sports. I love sports. Pickleball, paddle, anything that makes me move. I'm gonna enjoy this, and that's actually a good way to empty my head after so many hours of podcasting in the day.
I can absolutely relate. Well, mine is in the morning. Mine is to make sure that my head is on straight before I start the day, but I am the same way.
So respect to you, Ashley, because I still struggle to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. I'd rather do this at the end, so I'm impressed.
Well, thank you, because I can't do it your way at the end of the day. I am doing what you're doing, sleeping. So, and we always end our segment with a book that you would recommend to our squigglers. It doesn't have to be a business book. It can be something that you read for mindlessness, or it can be something that's changed your life, but something you would recommend to others.
Tough one, because I have a few that comes to mind, and I feel some of those will have already been recommended on the show. So one that changed my life, that set me on this whole path from like kind of not so successful high school student to what I'm doing right now, is How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. Um, Understanding how people work and understanding how genuinely build connections with people. When we think about podcasts, that's the extreme version of that, right? That's downstream effect of understanding how people work and how to build relationships. So that's one. And the compound effect. I don't remember the name actually, but the compound effect of like not underestimating the small habits and sticking to discipline and showing up each and every week to an audience of 25 people. But that's true for anything in life. Really, really good book.
Thank you. We're going to be sure to add those into the description so that we can share those with everyone. And we really appreciate the time you took with us today. This was a lot of fun. And any opportunity that we get to learn and laugh at the same time is, number one in my book. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was great. Had lots of fun and a great conversation. Thank you so much, Ashley and Colleen.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we will have in the show notes too where people can find you and your business.
Yeah, ghapodcast.com, probably the simplest way to check out what we do. And give a little go at my LinkedIn profile, Guillaume Jouvencel. We'll put the link because it's a nightmare to spell and to pronounce, as we all know. But yeah, those are the two places where you can find all the information in the world.
Great. Thanks so much. This has been wonderful.